Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Arman Moztarzadeh, and today I'm going to be doing my presentation on Git for the next generation, how Git is shaping education and student communities in university. So just to give a little brief background about me, I'm originally from Vancouver, BC, so just up north from where we are. I'm in my last year at university where I'm studying Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. I've also been a GitHub Campus Expert since 2022. I'll talk a little bit about what that program is, but essentially it's kind of acting as like a student ambassador for GitHub. So we work with other students in university, try to get them familiar with GitHub and what resources it has to offer. I've also worked at Amazon previously as a software intern, and I've also TA'd for the past 2 years at UBC, mainly in courses in cloud computing and computer networking. So just to go over a brief background of the agenda for today, I'll talk a little bit about the chaos of what it's like to work without Git in university and why Git is really, really important for education. I'll talk a little bit about how Git is used at UBC currently, and then I'll lead that into communities and how Git is being used at hackathons and design teams and other classrooms. And then I'll talk a little bit about the next generation of Git and what we have to do in the education space to kind of help students get familiar with Git and any steps that we need to take. So I kind of wanted to talk about this. Like some of you guys might have seen this before, but working without Git can sometimes be a nightmare. You'll have like files that are like called like final real version, stuff like that. And it can sometimes be a nightmare. As a TA, like when people upload their files, sometimes it even looks like this. They don't even bother to rename it. So even in Google Docs, sometimes it's like a nightmare in collaborating because you don't know what someone changed and like it won't show you the exact specific details. So mostly in 2020, we would mostly send files back and forth. There weren't that many people who knew how to use Git and version control in GitHub. So just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Currently, if we don't look at Git right now in education, we see that overwritten work goes untracked. So it's really hard to trace what was lost or who made the change. And kind of goes back to that Google Docs nightmare where it'll show you like what person changed what, but it won't show you like the specifics sometimes. So it won't show you like this person made a slight edit on like maybe this word or this sentence. There's also lost versions. So files will often get saved as final v2, really final doc, and still easy to lose track. And so teams can't really roll back to a stable version if something breaks. There's also last minute merge nightmares. So this is particularly what I've seen in like hackathons where if you have like multiple people working on the same file, someone might make a last minute change and then that'll break things. And then without Git or version control, it's really hard to know what that change was and how we can roll back to another release version. And lastly, wanted to talk about email file chaos. So some of you guys have already mentioned, but like, yeah, without Git, we'll have multiple files and emails sent back and forth, which is unreliable and just plain inefficient. So what currently we have at the university is we have the UBC library, which offers a lot of interesting resource for students to go check out. So on the main webpage, there's a section with resources, and it offers basically tutorials and guides on how people can get familiar with Git. I thought this is really cool because the people are actually trained with Git even in person and are able to help people who may not have a background with Git. So if there's a student working with GitHub or Git for their project, it's a really cool place to go get help in person. And the UBC library in general is the main places to go for resource. So overall, it's been found as a cool way to get help. We're also looking at the adoption of Git in many courses and classrooms. So in this screenshot, for example, this is a course that I'm currently TAing, which is cloud computing. We've used GitHub and Git for since this course offering, but we've even had instructors slowly moving towards managing their course materials that are being hosted on GitHub. So currently we have students upload their files using Git and GitHub, and when we have repos, we can see what are some of the previous changes they've made. It makes it really much easier as the teaching team to see the organization structure of these repositories. Another one that's been really common is we have an object-oriented course at UBC, which is taught in second year. And that one roughly has around 1,100 students enrolled every year. So it's a large course. It's required for the computer science major. And in that course, they go over Git. So they go over how to, for example, upload your project onto GitHub and how to create this object-oriented project. But they also don't give you a tutorial on it. So even though they tell you to use Git, they don't really give you a tutorial. They kind of go into the course with an expectation that you're going to learn Git on your own. And you might think that's very weird, but it's actually common in some courses. For example, we have a data structures and algorithms course where they teach that in C++. The hardest part for me wasn't actually learning the concepts of the data structures and algorithms, but it was learning how to work with C++ and just wrapping my head around pointers. So it's kind of nice because I feel this gives students the options to explore what works for them and what doesn't. But the most important thing is that we have the support system. So even though they don't go over Git, all the TAs are well equipped with how to use Git. So we do teach students in that sense if they have troubles with any Git problems, basically. So just to throw a couple more examples. The first screenshot is taken from a computer engineering course at UBC. Goes over how to use Git, and it's also for an operating systems course. The second example is kind of an instructor guide for how instructors can use GitHub. So it goes through a course that UBC made to get instructors more familiar with using Git and GitHub. And also, this quotation here that I have is taken from a data science, third-year data science course, where they actually spend the first 2 or 3 weeks going over how students can use Git and GitHub. I found that when I took this course 2 years ago, 80% of the people just breeze through because by third year, most people already have a solid background of Git. But of course, there's people from other disciplines who may not know how to use Git or GitHub. So I thought it was really cool how we'd kind of go over Git and GitHub in these courses to try to get people more familiar with them. So of course, Git is widely used at hackathons. Hackathons are one of the best places to see Git in action. Where my role kind of jumps in is I'm a campus expert at UBC. So what I do is kind of help these hackathons and design teams to try to get people more onboarded and familiar with GitHub and the resources that it has to offer. Kind of like a quick short story, when I first joined in 2022, and when I was helping out with these hackathons, people kind of thought I was like a GitHub support member. So people would come to me with their Git problems and ask hey, how does this merge conflict work? Can you kind of help me? I'm having some debugging issues, and I was yeah, sure, man, I can help you with this merge conflict. So what we usually do is try to get people onboarded onto the student developer pack. And this basically allows them to get access to cool resources that can help students. So we have DigitalOcean credits for hosting. We have also Microsoft Azure credits. There's also platforms for learning, such as Data Camp and Educative. So we try to get students onboarded so that they can take advantage of these cool opportunities. And it's only if you're a student. And with PJ's support, he kind of helps run the program. So all in all, it's very smooth. But yeah, to kind of touch on, first and foremost, Git makes collaborating much more easier. So at hackathons, I see almost everyone utilizing Git, which makes it much easier to kind of collaborate on projects. at one of our NW Plus hackathons, which is UBC's hackathon, in 2021, I remember there were 2 first-year students who were in a team who were emailing files back and forth. And within an hour, they already overwrote each other's code. So that's why we try to get people to kind of use Git and GitHub, because it kind of clears that challenge and difficulty space. GitHub also serves as the hosting platform, so teams don't really have to like reinvent the wheel. I've seen a lot of projects be hosted on GitHub and GitHub pages. So of course, with the developer pack, people can take advantage of other hosting platforms. A couple of people I've talked to at these hackathons mentioned that they're not that familiar with working with Git, so such as designers. So we try to make Git more accessible to folks who don't really have a tech background. That's kind of our goal, to kind of reach out to other disciplines and fields, maybe like humanities, to kind of get them introduced to Git and how we can get them familiar. So with that, we also run a tons of workshops. So our hackathons are mostly beginner friendly. So even for the ones that are intermediate, we always have workshops in Git, GitHub, React, web development. So that way people can come into the hackathon for the first 24 hours, kind of get a background of Git and how to use GitHub. And then the other remaining day could be spent working on the project. So that kind of helps that space. I also wanted to touch about UBC Launchpad. So Launchpad is our university's largest software engineering design team. Basically, each project, there's usually about 4 a year, has about 8 to 10 members, and it spans throughout the entire year, so September till May. Some projects get to work with stakeholders. So last year or 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with a nonprofit organization called BC Cancer, where we helped them develop a lab management platform. But essentially with these groups, we have people that are divided into different roles. So we have front end, people working on the back end, we have designers, and sometimes it can kind of be a free-for-all. So we can post issues or tickets on GitHub issues and then to kind of tell people like what you want to work with. So last year I had the great opportunity to be a tech lead where I led an open source project called Forum AI that kind of helps, that kind of uses retrieval augmented AI to help students engage with course documents. So we already have forums which are used in courses, but what this does is it allows students the ability to upload their course documents and then have it basically an AI implemented so that it can answer like these quick questions for them. So all these projects are worked on GitHub, and of course, we try to make students take advantage of the student developer pack. So for those that don't have a background in Git, we kind of go over a kind of like a quick Git workshop in the beginning of the year. But usually I'd say 80% of the people do have a solid Git background when they join this club. Even if there are people that have challenges working with Git, we usually pair that like beginners with mentors. So that way they can kind of receive that mentorship throughout the year and support. So they're not basically stuck on working with Git or other version controls. So we do try to offer that support. So I'll touch a little bit about what's already happening and what needs to happen. So of course, we're already seeing code spaces, and this is making a huge difference at hackathons and in classrooms. So instead of spending hours setting up environments, students can start coding instantly in the cloud. This is really useful for beginners because they don't have to troubleshoot on like how to get their repository set up or stuff with like installation. In research, Git is starting to play a bigger role. So it's been able to help track experiments, share results, help with reproducibility. Nowadays, a lot of people use Overleaf for LaTeX, but I think a couple of years ago, maybe in 2023, Overleaf added the option for Git. So now users can like clone their project and do the same Git operations like Git pull, Git push on their Overleaf research paper. So I think that's a huge win. And of course, in the classroom setting, instructors are already adopting GitHub Classroom to manage assignments. So this helps with automating repo creation and grading. But more importantly, it teaches students professional workflows early and how those workflows work. So I think the grading aspect in particular is really interesting because it can save a lot of time. A couple years ago, when helping to TA the first rendition of our cloud computing course, we were looking at different autograder options, and GitHub Classroom was actually one of them. Unfortunately, we didn't end up using that, though. We went with a different autograder system, but I still think it's a really cool feature to have, especially since it can help with that reproducibility aspect and grading feature. In terms of what needs to happen, we can't really stop at CS courses. We have computer engineers, electrical engineers, and computer scientists using Git and GitHub, but I know Git can be expanded to other fields such as like business or humanities. It can even be expanded to courses like biology or chemistry where you have to write lab reports. So I think business students writing case studies, humanities, and these are all collaborative research, so they can all face the same version control problem. So I think if we can use Git, that can kind of be the backbone of the collaboration aspect. We should also try to normalize Git. So kind of like learning Excel, I think it should be a core skill that every student should learn. Managing versions and collaborating effectively is not just a CS problem, but it's like a universal skill. So I think if we can make Git more accessible in that aspect and have more user-friendly approaches, that'd be much better. Lastly, we also want to look at how we can make Git more accessible for beginners. We should lower the barrier to entry. So that means better onboarding mentors and GUIs that make Git less intimidating. So maybe looking at how we can make Git more visual. So like going over Git sim and like how we can perhaps do it like a gamified feature, use like visual aspects to make Git more user-friendly. But that's about it. So if you guys have any questions, you guys can let me know. I kind of attached 2 QR codes. The first one talks a little bit more about GitHub education and what the program is about. And the second one goes over what the student developer pack is and what resources and tools it offers. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you guys can feel free to reach out through my socials there. But thank you very much.